Welcome back to How'd We Get Here? I'm your host, Jalen Knox, and today I have a really good episode planned for you guys. But before we get into that, I want to ask if you're watching on YouTube to go over and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you get post notifications when I'm dropping new episodes of your new favorite podcast. Also, if you're listening over on the audio platforms, make sure you rate the show 5 stars. It really helps push me into the algorithm. And come on over to the YouTube and do the same thing. Like button, subscribe, hit that bell notifications again. Like I said, we're on the road trying to hit 100 subscribers, so every one of you guys helping out with that goal really means a lot, and I want to say thanks in advance for the support that I know you guys are going to give me. And I am really excited for this episode here. This is one of the first ideas that I had when I was even thinking of making the podcast. This was one of those things that really got me wanting to talk. I was talking about this with my family and my friends and coworkers. I was talking about this with anybody who would listen. So I'm really happy that I'm able to sort of put this into a place where all you guys can kind of hear it too. And what we're going to be talking about is advertisement in the NBA. And this is a pretty big deal to NBA fans if you're a fan like myself, because as you've probably noticed when you turn on an NBA game, there's just like this overwhelming bombardment of advertisements being thrown into your face. And I'm not talking about just like the gambling or the beer commercials, which is a whole separate conversation that I can make a completely different video on, but talking about the things that are actually on the screen while the basketball is being played. When you talking about the jerseys on the court itself, the out of bounds area, the scorer's table, on the side of the backboard, the stanchion, even on like the little score bug when you're watching the game has an ad or two on it. And if I'm going to be honest with you, it has become pretty annoying. It's one of those things that I can't not notice when I'm looking at it now. And it might just be because like I know that it's there now, so I have to kind of look for it. But it just feels somewhat distracting to a certain extent. I'm not going to say it's overall ruining me watching the game. I still love to watch basketball. I watch the NBA all the time still. But it is one of those just annoying little things that happens when you're watching the game that I can't help but notice. So it made me want to look into it a little bit more and try to figure out how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we have all of these ads plastered across my screen, and why, I can't watch a simple NBA game without them trying to sell me all these insurances and cars and stuff like that. And again, this is just on the court when you're watching the games itself. Not even going to talk about really commercials here. And the first domino in this whole advertising mess that we have today that I would say was back in 2014 when Adam Silver took over as commissioner of the NBA for David Stern. And, commissioners in all sports leagues, they sort of have an agenda, and not in the sense of like how they use that term on like Twitter or like pushing an agenda, but they have some goals. They have a thing that they want to do, ways that they want to help push the league forward, something that they want to be remembered for. They want to leave their stamp on the history of this league. This is across all sports. With David Stern, his big thing was making the game global. He wanted to push the bounds of NBA fandom beyond the United States. He wanted to get the NBA in every country across the world because more fans, more money. Because again, that's what this is all about for these guys. I get it. It's entertainment. And I would say I think David Stern did a pretty good job of accomplishing his goal. When we look at the NBA today, it is such a global sport now. Overall, like basketball in general is a global sport now, but the NBA itself is such a big global brand, with a lot of the best players in the NBA right now being foreign-born players, whether that be Giannis or Luka, SGA, Jokic, Wemby. A lot of these guys, grew up watching the David Stern era of the NBA, like myself included. But they grew up watching like the David Stern era of the NBA from the other side of the world, and it inspired them to want to be young basketball players. So I think he definitely accomplished that. Now, when it comes to Adam Silver, I'm not really too sure on what I think his goal is right now. I haven't been able to really pinpoint it, but what I can say is that advertising and ad revenue in general is a very big part of it for him. Because if we go back to even at the very, very beginning of him becoming the commissioner, one of the first ideas that he presented to the league board was putting little jersey patches on the team uniform to have like sponsorships, brand deals on the jersey. And this got a lot of pushback from NBA media and NBA fans alike for good reason. And it's not because that like teams having logos on their jersey was a completely unheard of thing. I mean, even like the Premier League for soccer, which is one of the things that Adam Silver referenced when he was talking about putting these patches on there. Premier League has it to a much bigger extent than what Adam Silver wanted to do, where there's really big logos. Like I don't know the team it is. I generally don't know the team it is, but I know there's a Premier League team, and the biggest thing on their jersey just says Spotify. But that's just how it is over there. That is kind of commonplace for them. And I think one of the things about that, because Adam Silver mentions, is how, they're gaining a lot of fans in the United States at the time. This was, at this point, 12 years ago. And it's become a much bigger thing in the U.S. now. But at the time when they were gaining a lot of their U.S. fan base, he's mentioning how, they have these brands and these sponsorships on their jerseys. And it doesn't seem like NBA fans care that much about it. And I think one of the parts of that Adam Silver wasn't really, I'm not going to say he wasn't aware of, but wasn't really talking about, is that this is how a lot of U.S. fans met the Premier League. They were introduced to the Premier League as the soccer league that the guys have the big company logo on their jersey. So it wasn't something that we had to necessarily get used to as a change, because this is just how it was presented to us. It's the same reason why no one complains about NASCAR. Everyone knows that's what NASCAR is. You see the guys in their full on, the jumpsuits that they wear, covered in all these brand logos, or the car that they're driving. Like, I can't name a current NASCAR driver. The only ones I know offhand are like Dale Earnhardt and Danica Patrick, who I think are both retired now. But the cars, the M&M's car, the Lowe's car, the Home Depot car, the company plastered across that vehicle that you see going around the track. I'm not someone who watches NASCAR, so again, I don't know. But that is what I, as an outsider looking in, know NASCAR to be. That is NASCAR culture, which is, again, why no one really cares when they do it, because that is what it is. This is how we know it as. And it's not even that putting it on the front of like a basketball jersey or something about the sport is inherently wrong, because when you look at the NBA's sister league, the WNBA, growing up, I remember seeing, whenever I would see highlights or clips or whatever of WNBA games, specifically, I always think of the Lynx with Maya Moore, because at the time she was just killing it in the league. But every time you see those clips, you look at the jersey and everything, and the biggest thing you're going to see on the front of that Lynx jersey is Mayo Clinic. Like, if you held the jersey up and asked a random person to tell you what the team name was, they would just assume it was probably Mayo Clinic, because that was the biggest thing on the front of the jersey. And again, people didn't really have a huge issue with that, because we understood the situation the WNBA was in. They needed the money. That was the whole point of them having all those brand sponsorships on the jersey. They needed revenue. They needed something to generate money to keep the league afloat. So again, no one really cared, because it just made sense. And the NBA was just in a weird spot, because they weren't a struggling league at the time. They were the second biggest sports league in the United States, only behind the NFL, which is a monster in itself that no one should even really try to tackle at this point. But not to say that the NBA was doing bad. In that year, 2014, they brought in $4.8 billion in revenue. Yes, that's billion with a B. 4.8, almost $5 billion just in that season alone. So this wasn't about survival or necessity or trying to keep the league afloat. It was simply about greed. And Adam Silver wanted to find any way to push that revenue number even higher and higher. And again, I get it. That's the point. It's a business. That's what it's for. We're about making money. But I do think sometimes there can be a line that you don't need to cross with certain things and still be profitable, or there's a limit to the amount of money you need to gain as a business. But that's just my personal take on it. What do I know? But after they introduced the idea of the patches on the jerseys and all the initial pushback, they pivoted away from the patches and they decided on an idea that was a bit less blasphemous to us NBA purists, is what I'll say. So instead of putting the logos on the jerseys, they decided to put them on the court itself. Now, they weren't going to be on the actual playing surface of the court. It was just going to be on what they call the apron, which was the out of bounds area, which was previously only reserved for team websites and like their social media handles. Things of that nature was the only thing that was allowed to go in that space on the court. And this was still a really big thing too, because this was at the time the first, I would say, outside sponsorship that we had seen on an NBA court, except for the brandings of the companies who owned the stadiums they were playing in. Like you would see the Staples Center logo, American Airlines logo, or like the Quicken Loans Arena. You would see those logos all over the court. And that was, but like people didn't even really consider that to be an advertisement, even though, again, it was a giant, big advertisement billboard for Staples. But I'm someone who I think Staples Center, and I didn't even think of Staples, the brand, because it just got so ingrained into the name. But that's more of a one-off for that situation. A lot of the other ones, the brand name does kind of stand out a little bit more from the actual arena itself. So there was no on-court advertising in the game really of any kind, unless you also consider the players' shoes, which again are big advertisements. They're big walking billboards for these shoe brands. And if we're talking about that, we'd have to go all the way back to 1958 when Bob Cousy signs the first ever NBA sneaker deal with PF Flyers. But again, most of us don't really see it as that. That's what it is, but no one really cares about it. We're not upset about this thing. It's not distracting. It's not intrusive. It's not in my face. It doesn't feel like some things being pushed on me. They're trying to sell me something. Again, it's what is happening, but it's more about how we feel as the consumers, I think, is the main point with this here, which is why these advertisements on the court was such a big thing. Now, they were only allowed off the playing surface, and they were only allowed during locally televised games. So during national televised games, you wouldn't see these logos, these advertisements on there at the time. But still, it was kind of like, going past the point of no return, ripping off the seal. It's like when, you get a new package or something, like I said, you rip something out the plastic, or I think the best way to put this is it was opening Pandora's box, because what happened is the NBA starts putting these advertisements on the court. And of course, the NBA revenue starts to shoot up at really, really, really high rates. Like not just a small bump here or there. I'm talking about in the first 2 years of that being introduced, the annual revenue for the NBA went from $4.8 billion up to 5.9. So a full $1 billion difference we're talking about here. And again, that isn't all directly related to that ad revenue, but you do see an increase, and that was a really big factor in it. And that right there was kind of all the proof that Adam Silver needed to run wild with this advertisement plan that he had. And I'm not saying that this was some sneaky way to try to like Trojan horse the patches in there, but I think it was a really good way to show proof of concept that hey, look, we can put these advertisements in more places and look what it does for us. And this was just this one little thing here for locally televised games. Imagine if we can do something everywhere, like a jersey patch. So we get to 2017 when the NBA's jersey manufacturing deal with Adidas comes to an end. And they sign a new deal with Nike. And this brought in two very big changes when it comes to the NBA and their jerseys. One of those being, a thing I keep mentioning all the time, is the patches on the jerseys. I remember there was this big presentation they had for the announcement of the new jerseys with their partnership. They had a player from every team come there to like model the jerseys, and they were dressed in these all black jumpsuits, and they do this countdown, 3, 2, 1. They rip off the jumpsuits and you see the new jerseys. And some teams got a new like redesign for their whole uniform, like logo, as teams do every couple of years. You'll notice this trend in sports. You can kind of always tell how bad a franchise is by how many times they redo their logo and redo their uniforms, because they need a new way to get people to buy the jerseys again, because what's happening in the actual games isn't making people buy stuff. So it's a little thing, if you didn't notice, just pay attention to it. Look at what teams are switching their logos, switching their jersey designs every 5, 6, 7 years, and it'll probably tell you who the worst teams are in that league. But back to these patches. So everyone takes off their black warm-ups and they have these jerseys. And so every jersey had one thing that was really new. And that was they all had the Nike swoosh on the chest. And this was big too, because before, even the Adidas jerseys didn't have that on the front. They didn't have the 3 stripes logo anywhere on the jersey. If it wasn't NBA team related, like a anniversary patch or something for like the series, like the finals they're playing in, but if it wasn't anything like that or commemorating a former member of the organization, there was nothing on that jersey that was not NBA related. You could not do that on there. So even letting Nike put the swoosh on the front of the jersey was a really big deal. But the other thing was some teams had different company sponsors, logos all over. I'm not gonna say all over. It was just one patch, but it felt like it at the time, like all over the jersey. But it was just one, I think 2.5-inch patch right here in the upper left corner of the jersey. And I remember myself at the time being a little off-put by the situation. I didn't like it. It felt weird. And again, I was only 17 at the time, so I didn't have a super extensive history of watching the NBA. I think at that point, I think the first time I really got into the NBA was like maybe 2007, 2008. But they have these patches on the jerseys. And as to be expected, people in the media did not like it. People were very against it, felt like it was ruining the sanctity, like tainting what the NBA jersey represented. And I think what made it worse was some of the brands that were on the jerseys could just felt out of place. Like, I'll say, as a Milwaukee Bucks fan and from Milwaukee, I thought it was really interesting, kind of cool that they had the Harley Davidson logo on their jersey. I said Harley Davidson. Yes, that is the motorcycle company. Apologize. But they had that on the jerseys. And I thought that was really cool because it was a Milwaukee local-based brand. So it didn't feel too off. It was still a Milwaukee jersey to me. It felt very Milwaukee. But when you look at some of the other ones, like the Boston Celtics having the GE patch on their jersey, or the Golden State Warriors having Rakuten on there, it just felt really weird. And the jersey patches have only gotten worse as time has gone on. If we're being honest, like if we look at some of the ones now, like the biggest deal right now for a jersey patch is the Lakers. They have $100 million deal with a Korean frozen food brand called Bibigo. You guys have probably seen it before. I have some of their stuff in my freezer. You probably do too. But it was just weird seeing that on the Los Angeles Lakers jersey. But I think the worst one overall would have to be the Clippers' new patch sponsor company. It says Visit Rwanda. I remember the first time I saw that, and I thought that was kind of crazy to have that on the front of an NBA jersey. But that just showed me that there was really nothing off limits, and there was nothing that these billionaires wouldn't do to get another dollar. They didn't really care about, not to say that there had to be, but there was no type of like brand continuity. It didn't have to match up, because even the Bucks with that Harley Davidson thing on there, they don't have that anymore. It is now a Motorola logo on there. So again, it doesn't really matter. Whoever's the highest bidder, they're going to get your patch on the jersey. So maybe if we get enough likes on this video, we get enough subscribers on the channel, maybe we'll get a How We Get Here logo on the front of the Milwaukee Bucks logo, just like the Mr. Beast thing on the Hornets thing. So just keep running up the engagement. Maybe we'll all get a patch on the jersey, guys. But going back to the advertisement thing here, the jersey patches wasn't even really the most intrusive thing that I would say it was when it comes to like the overall viewing experience of the game, because for the most part, it doesn't really matter when you're watching the game. Like, you see the front of their jersey, but that's not really what you're looking at. It's not what you're watching when you watch the actual game. So it wasn't really intrusive. It was almost like it blended in kind of like the sneaker thing. And that's me being nice about it, because we all still notice it, but we all just kind of got used to it. But I think the thing that's become a real eyesore in the eyes of a lot of NBA fans overall is the on-court logos, because they've extended it beyond the out of bounds line, and now they started adding those logos and brandings to the court itself. And this all happened back in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic, and everything shut down, the NBA included. So then they shut down for a couple of months, and they finally decide we're going to bring it back, but we're going to go down to Orlando at Disney World, and we're going to finish out the regular season and the playoffs in what we all know now as the bubble. Now, the problem is for the NBA is they can't sell tickets, they can't sell jerseys, they can't sell concessions, they can't sell any of these physical items in person to the people that would normally be coming to these games if they were in their local city. So they have to find a way to supplement that revenue. So what do? They sell more ad space to more companies. Of course they do, because that is what they're going to do anyways. This just gave them another in to do it, and it have a real reason behind it that people could maybe understand. So we see it in the bubble. They're adding these new decals onto the courts. I know there's one for like Chime, or during like a Lakers playoff game, there was one that said UCLA Medical Clinic. But there's all these different sponsors and everything being added onto the court. And it's not just the court. They're also adding them to the side of the backboard, where it'll say State Farm on the stanchion, or it'll have the I can't think of another one, but it's a bunch of different logos just all plastered on the side of the stanchion, because that's in view of the camera when the game is on. So why not put an ad there, because someone's going to pay for it. So they put these ads all over it, and basically what happens is the NBA realizes that, we can kind of keep doing this and put a little bit more and more of this on there. And deeper into the playoffs, you see more and more ads pop up, more and more ads pop up. And then you would think, okay, we're out of the pandemic. It's a few years later. All right, we can kind of reel back a little bit. We're getting our ticket sales. We're getting our jersey revenue. We're getting all that in-person money back. Maybe if they don't dial it back, they'll keep it the same. They did the exact opposite of that. The amount of advertisements you see on the court from, like, say 2020, 2021 to 2023, and like currently, it has basically doubled. There may be like 4 or 5 of those things you would see like per like half court. You can see easily 10 to 12 of those things everywhere on your screen at all times now. And unfortunately, the numbers supported this, because in the first 10 years of Adam Silver being the commissioner of the NBA, like I said, that 2014 year, they made $4.8 billion. As of 2024, they made $11.3 billion in revenue alone just that season. So he more than doubled, close to tripling that amount in a 10-year span. So it's kind of hard to argue with those numbers when you're talking to shareholders and people who care about profit that this is the way to go. So I don't really see this slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. We're going to see more ads in more places than we could ever think of. There's even ads on the top of the backboard, something you never really ever see. You rarely see it, maybe once or twice every couple of NBA games you watch, but there's advertisements up there for tires. Is that going to make you want to buy tires? Probably. If you see it enough times, maybe when you get a flat, you'll think, oh yeah, what was that tire company I saw? Maybe, who knows? I don't know. I'm not a marketing guy, but they will put ads anywhere. If there's enough space to fit text, they will sell it to a company and someone's going to buy it. And that also leads me to one of the more, I would say, frustrating parts about all of this for me personally that I've noticed is that not only is the ad space, like the ads taking up all the space on the court, just cluttering everything that I'm seeing, but it also took away space from things that we as fans enjoyed seeing on the court, specifically during the playoffs and the NBA finals. They used to have these decals like underneath it'd be kind of like around like the 3-point line area where it would say NBA playoffs first round, NBA playoffs second round, conference champion, like conference finals or NBA finals. They would have these little logos there, but that space is now being filled with a Skims ad. So you gotta, put that there because that's more important than making the most important time of year for this league feel special, feel important, not feel like a regular Tuesday night game, but make it feel like this game had weight. Or even if I'm just a casual fan walking by, maybe I don't care about the NBA too much regular season, but if I'm walking by and I see, oh, it's the playoffs, at least I understand why people are caring so much and I might sit down and watch it. It's like with the March Madness thing. It's why they put March Madness so big on the court, because you just know it is synonymous with something and it'll make the average person maybe sit down and watch like, oh, this is the tournament. So, yeah, but they filled that space up with advertisements. So now we don't get any more of that. Or like the giant Larry O'Brien trophy that used to be in the center of the court. I remember the first NBA finals I remember watching was 2008 Lakers versus Celtics. And I remember walking in the living room, seeing like the big trophy. I sat down and watched it. I didn't really care that much about basketball. I knew a little bit from the video games, but it wasn't like I was an NBA fan. But I remember that's a core memory of seeing that big trophy. It's how I remember I was watching the finals. And they took some of those things away from us and got to the point that even on social media, a lot of fans were publicly criticizing the NBA for just doing a bad job, is what I would say is like just branding the league itself. You see all these other brands all over the court, but the NBA is doing a bad job at like branding themselves, putting their brand first and foremost before everything else. And the fans finally decided to call them out on it. And it got so bad to the point that during the NBA finals last year, so much of the call outs were happening where people were saying it just didn't feel like the finals. It just felt like a regular weekday game. No one really cared. It didn't feel magical, big, special, important. It was nothing that made me want to sit down and watch and pay close attention to it because it just felt like a regular game. It's like, at least, man, just give us the trophy back. We want the trophy. Put something on there that tells me this is the finals. So finally, they give us a little holographic logo Larry O'Brien trophy plastered onto the court. It's not even a real one because they don't even do the real advertisements on the courts anymore. Everything is a hologram, so that way we can change it out every quarter. The first quarter, it's Clorox. The second quarter, it's Target. The third quarter, it's Skims. And then the fourth quarter, it's Ruffles, But every quarter, I can just swap it out with something. So that's what they did. They digitized the little Larry O'Brien trophy and said, here you go. This is what you wanted, right? You happy now? And myself and other NBA fans included, we feel like that was a bigger slap in the face than just not putting the logo, putting anything on there at all. because it felt like you chose to just sort of mail it in and not really put any effort into it because you didn't really care about it because it didn't make you any money. You couldn't sell that. Like if it was like I said, if it was a Ruffles sponsorship, okay, we'll do it. We'll make it really big, really bright. Because that was the other thing. The trophy is supposed to be gold. It was really like faded and white. It was just a bad thing. Like that someone who had just got their their what is it, graphic design job intern just slapped something on there real quick, copy and pasted it, and boom, now we got it on there. You guys can shut up, stop complaining about it. It was so bad to the point that after the finals ended, the NBA basically had to announce that they were going to be putting those things back on the court coming up with the upcoming season. So we'll see what happens. The playoffs are right around the corner, so I'll be watching intently to see what's on there too. And bringing up the social media thing, that brings up another thing that I won't say is as intrusive as those other things, but does kind of feel just as off to me, just as weird to me. And that is that when you look on the internet, like as someone who is admittedly spending way too much time on social media, I'm trying to cut it back, but someone who's spending so much time on social media, I see a lot of posts from the NBA and I see a lot of promotional things for the games coming up and stuff like that. And they can't just make a regular tweet about like a key matchup. They can't just say, we're going to get a game of Steph Curry versus Nikola Jokic. Tune in to Warriors Nuggets at 8 p.m. tonight on NBC. They can't do that. They have to put, it's a clash of two former Kia MVP award winners tonight at 7. It can't just be a promo of we have two of the best stars. It has to be, let's use this as another brand opportunity. We're going to market the NBA or MVP award is sponsored by Kia. And I know this isn't a new thing. That award has been sponsored by Kia for a very long time. That in itself isn't necessarily the complaint. I do not like that those things are sponsored like that, but it's also like the All-Star Weekend, every event. Again, it was always the Foot Locker 3-point contest, the Mountain Dew, but now it's the Mountain Dew 3-point contest or the Starry thing, but it was like the Sprite slam dunk contest. Everything was branded, everything was logo. It's always been like that. So I don't want to make it seem like those things are new, but they're starting to advertise or put ads on everything, the smallest little things, even down to something as simple as a game-winning shot. I remember earlier in the season, Giannis hits a post-fade game winner against the Indiana Pacers. Really cool, really good moment. You go on Twitter, you go to the NBA page. Of course, they're going to post the highlight of one of their best players, in my opinion, the best player, hitting a game-winning shot. And you look at the caption, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo hits the @Tiso buzzer beater. And it made me want to just hurl. Because what do you mean you can't even talk about a buzzer beater without throwing an ad in there? You can't talk about a highlight clutch moment from one of the superstars of your league without throwing an ad in there. You had to sell the rights to buzzer beater to a watch company. It's just, I don't know. It's just bad taste to me. And even it got even worse. I was watching a Celtics versus Nuggets game and they go to overtime and the announcer says, so it comes back from commercial break and it's welcome back to the Kia overtime. And it's like, dude, you guys sold the rights to overtime? Kia has everything. Kia probably is like a 50% shareholder in the NBA. But you sold the rights to Kia to overtime. And it's one of those things for me that just, it rubs me the wrong way because what is this doing for the fan experience? How does this help the fans? Because it would be different if we're adding all these advertisements, getting all this money, supplementing our funds in these other ways. So this way we can lower costs at arenas for tickets and everything. If that was the case, I think a lot more people would be on board with it. But NBA ticket prices have just skyrocketed over time. Over the last 5 to 10 years, the prices have just strictly gone up and up and up with no sign of decline coming anytime soon. So it's not like this helps the fan base in any way. It's not like this is keeping the league afloat or anything. All it's doing is beefing up these already super rich people's pockets to get even more rich. And I know the NBA isn't the only company that does advertisement. Heck, like I said, if someone paid me enough to do it, I would do an ad in this video. But I can't sit around and watch a league that I have grown to love. I've been watching the NBA for over a decade at this point, and I can't sit around and not say something when I see them slowly start to morph into what seems like a marketing advertisement company that just happens to run basketball games as their platform for the ads. It's just very, like I said, I'm not a fan of it, and I get it. It's a bigger issue, but the NBA does have their own stake in that issue because I do think it is harming the overall brand of the league, and people are not being quiet about it anymore. It's gotten to the point, like I said, everyone's on the internet talking about it. You got people like me getting on a podcast that they just created, and the first thing I want to talk about is what's wrong with the advertisement in the NBA. And I don't know where it's going to go going forward. I don't know if they're going to dial back at all. I'd be really surprised if they do, but I just wish there could be a better balance between advertisements and like selling me the actual product of the NBA, the branding of what the sport is. And I think that's what they need to get back to a little bit more. Bring back some more of the tradition, the memories, build some nostalgia for the younger fans that they can think about in the next 10, 15, 20 years when they're telling their kids about their favorite core memories watching basketball. Because I have those things, and they aren't plastered with logos and brand deals and advertisements all over every aspect and inch of the court. And I want people to have those same core memories to develop for themselves, because that is what builds the fan. The branding of what the NBA is what makes the fans the fans. And as you start to dilute that more and more and get further away from it, just makes it harder and harder to kind of draw people into certain things. That's just my 2 cents on the whole situation. Hopefully we see some change in the ad space when it comes to sports in general, like I said, with the gambling ads and everything like that happening, but just so many logos and brands on the court and in my game. Sometimes I just want to watch a basketball game. But that's going to do it for this episode. Again, I'm Jalen Knox, and I'll be back next time to try to figure out how do we get here.